Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach. How you guys going out there? We're going to get stuck into some defender chat today. So these are a bit of a video that I like to do every year, sort of on the brink of the season starting, just to give you an idea of what I think about basically anyone that you might be thinking of. I often find it difficult to cover everybody or do a video that gets around to everyone or answer everyone's comments and that type of thing. So at least this way you can jump into the description or the comments or whatever it might be, and every player that's at least in 2% of teams. You know, I always think, well, if they're in 2% of teams, there's at least a small majority of people, and some might watch this channel and they might be thinking, I wonder what he thinks of them. So we'll scroll past all your 0 and 1%ers, but I just want to touch on, all those guys that are in some of the teams. Which will be cool. Going to have videos every day, so it's pretty flat chat. Team reveal coming up, live session on Tuesday, so that's exciting. I'll put a time out, but I would imagine 8:30 on the Tuesday. Apologies about the microphone stuff going on with the live sessions lately. Not quite as crispy as they are at this stage. I know when I use the live streaming camera and have the microphone plugged in, for some reason it seems to be taking the visual nicely but not accessing my speaker that I want. Instead it seems to be coming through and recording or going through just the laptop speaker, which is obviously trash, as you know, so we'll work on that. But let's get stuck into it. Well, hey, actually before we do, I'll give you a little bit of an update on how Shorty's day went, a little bit of story time. I'm doing laps for life throughout March, so I might even put a little link in there. If you got a spare $5, I'd love you to donate. It's for a great cause. Where is it? It's for youth mental health, and I've just swimming a few laps. Haven't jumped in the pool for a while, but obviously doing youth work at the moment, and I'm always pretty passionate about youth mental health. So just been swimming with my sister and a couple of friends, but I kicked it off just today with a little solo sesh. So had a pretty busy week last week with assessments, so I thought, gee, I better get in the pool. Anyway, I'll tell you what, if you haven't gone for a swim for a while, shit, I was buggered. Just a little 25-metre pool too. I thought, I can't be bothered starting out with a 50-metre one. And Shorty's a bit of a backstroker, so no goggles, just rocking and rolling with your backstroke option. First 4 laps, not too bad. I was pretty stuffed, but sharing a lane with people is difficult. Halfway down the lane, I'm sort of going, bang, smack some guy in the head, and then a couple of laps later, I must have caught up to some guy, smacked his foot. Sorry, mate. Jesus Christ. Okay, whatever. And it's a bit going on, but 25 metres swimming when you haven't swum for a while, it's longer than you think, but Jesus, I was having the absolute piss taken out of me by some old lady. I'm like huffing and puffing, and I'm in reasonable nick. I'm a young fella, and this old lady must just swim daily. She's just roasting me. She's flying past. I've done like a couple of laps more, and I'm just sitting on the side bit, just like, shit, I'm pretty buggered here. And she's just up and back, gives me a little smile. I'm like, keep swimming, you bloody bitch, showing me up. No, she was all right. I say that in jest. But then I thought, this chick's absolutely destroyed me. She's pretty fit for an old bird. And then she got out. She's wearing flippers. Come on, man. You can't be wearing flippers in there. I thought you were just bloody the 1940s Ian Thorpe female version, I thought you were bloody on fire. But it was a bit of fun. I ended up doing, I eked out 32 laps in the end, which doesn't sound as impressive as it is because it's 25-metre pool. But, I'll tell you what, I was pretty sore, actually. You use quite a few muscles and body parts that you don't normally use when you're swimming, jeez, Shorty you'll sleep well tonight. So, I'll chuck a link, just wanted to jump into the back line and talk about that. So I'll just go through and just try and give my 2 cents worth, I guess. So hopefully it can just be a bit of a a one-stop shop sort of encyclopedia of Shorty's 15 to 30 seconds thoughts on most of these guys. So, yeah, let's get stuck right into it. And obviously it starts off pretty easy with Jake Lloyd. I think some people have maybe had a little bit of cold feet just with the likes of Blakey and a couple other guys, having some really impressive preseason games. And maybe Lloyd was just going through the motions. But I've been reassured by a Swans man. I've gone back and watched a couple of quarters, and he still seems to be in the same role. I don't think the wet weather suited him the other day. I wouldn't be too concerned. He's going to be a safe option. Whether he averages 107 again, 105, 112, who knows? One thing we do know is he's so damn consistent, so you're not really going to get that 66 where you go, okay, he's going to drop in price. He's just such a even contributor throughout the year that it is hard to find a dip. So he is a strong starting option, as is represented by that ownership. Now, Jack Ziebell's in 4% of teams. I'm not too interested in this one, and neither of you, or not too many of you out there, are either by the looks of it. If Aaron Hall's right for round one, then I think, it's probably the same either way. Ziebell's numbers did drop off a little bit when Hall really started to explode last year. I don't have him in front of me, but you can go and look back. He still averaged really nice, but there was a drop-off when Hall started to be more of a contributor. I just think we've got a lot of good options down the back line, and you'll need them because, like you can see, I'm running the 4 sort of primos, and as we know, defensive rookies are difficult. I won't run this all the way down to the rookies, but just keep in mind that we've probably got to land at least probably 4 of these premiums. So luckily we do have quite a few good options. Tom Stewart is one of those good options. I think for whatever reason he's not as sexy of a pick this year. I can only presume it's because of that injury, but he is back looking fantastic. For a while of the preseason, it sort of seemed as if, will he be right for round one? Well, he was fine for the Pracky game. I know he didn't play the other day against Gold Coast, but by all reports, that was just simply, I think his partner was giving birth, or potentially was. So he chose to, be there for that and didn't play, but it wasn't sort of injury related. So we can cool our jets. I'm getting concerned over that, and he'll be one of the top scoring defenders once again. Daniel Rich, I feel like Rich will again be a really impressive player, but I just think with his age, the price point, it just doesn't stack up for me. He's nearly 32, and last year was a ripper, but if you look at it, it's a real outlier, 107, and then nothing really that close to it. So I don't think the Daniel Rich selection makes a whole lot of sense. I just think you're paying absolute top dollar for a bloke who's delivered 3 figures once. So Aaron Hall, everyone sort of jumped off given the injury, and even if he is right for round one, I still wouldn't be too keen. He's historically struggled with the body, and again, an interrupted preseason doesn't exactly scream pick me. But Jack Crisp, I think he's another very popular option, getting some midfield time, but he's the sort of guy that, scores really well off a halfback flank, scores really well in the midfield. So he's going to have a strong responsibility in the Pies midfield this year. So I think that's a recipe for some really nice scoring potential. So he's in my team, and I just think he's a really safe option. So he's one that will probably be in many of the teams out there as well. Jordan Dawson, I was super excited on, say, a month or two ago. I really wanted to see a Pracky game with him involved in it, just to get a real defined position, see how he goes in the new colours, and what sort of is it wing, is it half back, is it a bit more time actually on ball. We didn't get to see it, therefore it just makes me a little bit wary, and it would seem as if a lot of you guys out there are thinking similar, just 4% of teams. But I would like to have him in my team throughout the year, all depending how he goes, obviously, but I reckon he's got one of the higher ceilings in terms of all the defenders. Let's just see how he settles into life as a Crow. We'll scroll past Heppel, and we'll talk about Luke Ryan. I think he'll have his days, no doubt about it. I was enlightened by a couple of comments, just looking at his numbers late last year when Hayden Young started to find a bit more of the ball, and it was interesting, But I do think Ryan is such a consistent quality player, and he's reliable, point of difference style of guy. He hasn't found his way into my team just yet, but that's not to discard him or sort of show too much disrespect to the lad. I think he's for a while now been a really solid contributor. So maybe he just gets hidden away over there in WA, but he has those days where he'll just take 12 marks and intercept and have rippers. He will have your 70s as well, but that's often something we can see from those intercept taller defenders, just depending on their matchups sometimes. And Ridley can be similar. I know last year at times he had to play a more accountable role. That shouldn't be as much of the case this time around with Kelly. And, he's shown his worth through the preseason games, intercepting and rolling off when he can. So I think Ridley, he's just in the conversation of one of the probably 4 to 6 guys that are just super reliable. So I think definitely warranted to be in your team. Same said for Jayden Short. He's recently, if you saw my team update video, I think it was on Thursday, he just made his way into the team probably over the last day. But yeah, I had 100k sitting there and James Sicily as well, and I'll talk about Sicily in a moment. But yeah, I just couldn't resist picking Short. I just think all exits out of defence for the Tigers just seem to go through him. He's getting so many kicks, so many kick-ins, loves to play on. He's just, without Hooley, those numbers have always stacked up. And we know Hooley ain't going to be there now. Short got a few opportunities via Hooley's injury to really be the main guy, and he showed that he loved it, and he'll be the main guy this year. So I find him pretty hard to turn down, to be honest. Bailey Dale, I think the only reason I feel like he's only in 3% of teams is because he's only done it once. But look, watching him play, even in the pracky games, that role seems very similar. Loves to dash, loves to take a few kicks on. So I think him and Daniel, I think ideally we'd love it if there was just one main guy down there, Daniel or Dale. But in terms of a football point of view, they team up so damn well. But look, I think you could envision probably an average in the mid-90s once again. I wouldn't think he'd go too much higher than that. So yeah, I not one of my first picked, but still going to have a really big say, particularly for the doggies. Christian Salem, he's just in the 2% aside, so I won't go too deep in this one. But look, he's a smart player, nice ball user. Burnt me many years ago when I started him and thought he would move into the midfield, and he's on a fairly long list of blokes who have burnt Shorty over the journey. But yeah, he's just a safe, reliable option. I wouldn't see him really busting out too much more than a 95 average. I think between 90 and 95 is sort of his place, but he's a really strong cog for the D's, and just makes smart decisions, uses it well, and he's going to return those types of numbers. Low to mid 90s, which is pretty solid if you're that way inclined. There is Caleb Daniel, a bit more popular than Dale. Daniel is one of my absolute favourite players, and this time last year I was sitting here telling you that he's as consistent as any and won't give you a headache at any stage. Well, he gave us multiple headaches last year, and I can only sort of suggest that was because of Dale in a way. I know he got tagged in Ballarat by Berry at one stage, but he was normally such a consistent guy, but he had some ups and downs last year, which probably has a few of us a little sheepish about picking him. I think he's probably the next rung below when I talk about the guys like Lloyd, Stewart, Crisp, Short, Ridley, etc. Daniel's probably the next rung below in terms of real good premiums, but he's definitely worth considering if you think he can bounce back to maybe mid to high 90s rather than sort of on the lower end. Then that could be something that you feel like you're going to get a bit of value out there. As we keep scrolling through, look, Lachie Whitfield speaks for himself. He's 47% ownership, and he's an absolute lock. I think he's unders. Some people worried about his body, but he's often had pretty impact style of injuries. It's not like he's often compare him to Adam Treloar. Treloar's had real soft tissue concerns, which we know can reoccur pretty easily. So I think Whitfield's a lock, and I could definitely see him averaging high 90s for sure. Could even hit that 3 figures at stages. Jake Lever's in 2% of sides. I wouldn't endorse that. I don't see him, being a top 8 defender, and he's not cheap or anything. So for the 2% out there, I can take a nice intercept, but he's not for me. Almost the exact same thing for Darcy Moore. Great footballer, crucial for your AFL team. But in terms of SuperCoach, they're just in that awkward range, and often you get a lot of awkward guys around that 450 to 500 because they're bloody good players, but they're not your top end and they're not value. So they sort of sit in no man's land. They're not going to make you money, and they're not warranting a position in your side to keep all year. So that's sort of how I see those fellas. Zach Tuohy's in 2% of sides. Definitely shouldn't be there. He's ageing. And again, he's not a top 8 option, and he doesn't represent any value. Aliir Aliir, I think a few people are maybe just falling in love with how exciting a player he is. He's certainly great to watch him burst onto the scene last year. He'd been on the scene for a while, but he played some amazing footy for Port, taking those intercept marks and really controlling the way teams even kicked into the back line or their forward line. So he's a fantastic player, but not one for your SuperCoach team, in my opinion. We can sort of scroll by, keep going for a touch here, I reckon. Adam Saad, I think he's probably yesterday's hero a little bit. He definitely had that 1 year where I reckon he averaged 97, but otherwise it just hasn't really been... there it is. So 97, and that's what I'd sort of talk about Daniel Rich. Sometimes players just have ripping years, and then you look back and you say, oh, that was a bit of an outlier. So I think Saad sort of belongs between 80 and 90 points in terms of an average. It's just not enough. A lot of talk about Baker, and only 2% of teams, but I think a few people have really been lured in by his last practice game. But he's not for me. I didn't see the practice game. I know he scored super well, but from the circles I'm reading and where I'm listening, I'm hearing that he's probably making more of a shift to forward line. I know he had some centre bounce attendance, but yeah, I just think massive risk at 449. I can't see it happening personally. I don't think he's really shown that premium ability ever before, and it's a massive risk to go with it right now. So he's not for me. And here is James Sicily. He's probably has been a bit of a drop-off. He was definitely more popular a couple of weeks back. I think a few people, and look, I guess myself included, have been a little scared off by the not as impressive practice game. I think we can put that down to just a little bit of rustiness, but also reading the match report. I think Kyle Hartigan didn't play or spent some time off the ground or whatever it was. Anyway, Sicily had to play a bit more accountable. So I guess that can happen. We see it happen with Luke Ryan at times. It can happen with Jordan Ridley occasionally. They're always the guy that they want to free up, but occasionally throughout the year it can't always happen. So there could be some rust. I still think Sicily's a really good option. I can see him averaging, mid to high 90s, but there might be some risk to it given he's missed so much footy. So I think still a strong consider, but I'd be lying to you if I preached him too much, because as you can see, over the last 3 or 4 days, I did ditch him for Jayden Short. So I can't really preach too hard on that one. Jack Lukosius, 3% of teams. I feel like we see that name and we get excited about the prospect, but it's a no from me. He's playing forward. He'll have his days at Gold Coast, but definitely not a SuperCoach option just yet. I feel like one day that beautiful ball use will definitely come in handy for our SuperCoach lovers out there. I'm just going to, we can sort of start to scroll through a bit now because it really starts to wane away. But Justin McInerney, got quite a few questions about him on the live session. I think he does have quite a bit of upside. For me, it's just such an awkward price. So awkward. If he's like 360, even, I know we're sort of splitting hairs, but I just think he's unproven. There's a lot going on there at Sydney. You've got, you've got Blakey and Campbell and Lloyd and Rowbottom, a couple of young guys in amongst that experienced fella. Sometimes they're on a wing, sometimes half back. Like, it's hard to get a genuine read on it. I honestly haven't seen him play too much. I saw a bit of that practice game, but I think he's got really big upside. I think he'll have a really good year. But at 4'11", look, what are we? You probably got to ask yourself, what are we picking him for? Is it to make money? Because he's not too much meat on the bone. So then, otherwise, his only other option is to be a keeper. And I think it'd be hard pressed to convince me that he's going to be a top 8 defender. So I don't know if he fits either category, but he's a definite improver. As we go on to George Hewett, and he's a real interesting one. I talk about some people, probably getting a little bit scared off by Sicily's not as impressive pracky game. Well, the absolute opposite is to be said about George Hewett. So he has put his best foot forward. He's looked super impressive, getting that real midfield role that we know he can play really well. And he isn't in my team at the moment, but I can't really fault him. I think he's going to have a really good year. I could definitely see him averaging early 90s. And he might even go beyond that, particularly early when Walsh isn't in the team. So I feel like he doesn't have the ceiling that other players do, but he's a real nuts and bolts, no frills kind of guy. He tackles hard, wins clearances, and he's a real reliable option. So I don't really see him failing. It might just be a question of whether he averages 91 or 97, kind of thing. That might be the difference between whether you hold him for the first 8 weeks or the whole year. Who knows? But at the moment, he looks like a rejuvenated player at the Blues, so he's pretty hard to argue with. Brad Hill's in 3% of teams. I know he has his days out every now and then, but no, I don't think he belongs in a SuperCoach team. As we kind of sift our way into the mid-350s, Noah Bolter in 2% of teams, but exciting, but no thank you. Will Day, super exciting, but awful pre-season, so we've got to put a line through him. I don't even know if he's going to be right for round 1, to be honest. And then Daniel Rioli, again, nicer position in terms of SuperCoach friendliness that we've seen previously, half-back flank, but I just don't think he has that ball-winning ability, even at half-back. I don't think he's got that upward trend going. He'll have a better year, and it's definitely more of a appealing option down back than he was as a small forward. But no, he doesn't interest me, particularly with some of the guys he's surrounded by. Not too far away. I talk about Hewett a little bit north, and then I talk about Blakey a little bit south. And I actually think I've probably been late to the party. There was a fellow on the live sesh who said it a couple of times that Blakey's just looking amazing down back, and I was watching a bit of the practice game like I've referenced a few times for the Swans because they are quite interesting, and he did look great, like 27 touches. And I think, look, if you are looking to go a mid-priced option at maybe D5 or wherever it might sit, then I think, if George Hewett's just out of range, then I think, look, I could honestly say Blakey could be a really handy option. It's fraught with danger, that sort of price, it can kill you if it goes wrong. It's super awkward, so buyer beware. But he's a talent, he's a beautiful left foot kick, got some dash, so he might have just found his position. He's 22, played about 50 games, finally found his right position in the back half of last year, and he might just be able to take it to the next level. So I think there's a little bit of merit in that one, if you want to consider him. And we're probably going to start to drop off. I got no idea why Aiden Core is in 3% of teams. I'm absolutely baffled by that. That doesn't really make any sense to me. Same with Shaki. No comment. Don't know. I know he's can take an intercept mark these days, but no thank you. Heath Chapman's a really interesting guy. The only thing I'd say, I reckon he's got massive upside, really good scoring potential. I just think I think he's going to have some days where, he's everything that we wanted. And he could have the first 6 weeks that we want. He could be a great selection for 6 weeks, but I just think we're going to see some inconsistencies, some up and down, because they still have Luke Ryan to rebound. They still have Hayden Young to rebound. And I think some days, Chapman will have a really nice day. I just think it's too risky for mine to go for. He's at a more appealing price. There's less risk attached to it because he's, $2.75. But I'd have to say no. But really like him, his role, the way he goes about it, his potential. So if you're really bullish on him coming on strong this year, which he looked great in the last practice game, then credit to you. I'm just not really looking to take that risk. Wayne Milera, 11% of teams. It was pretty buzz, a couple of months ago, but hasn't got out of the park. I'm not even sure why or where he's at, but with his history, we've got to put a line through him because, there's got to be massive question marks about that. And Jones is in 2% of teams. I think probably his most relevancy might be, maybe he's keeping Sin out of the team. I'm not too sure, but I don't think we should be going with him. Bowey, I think maybe we just get a little bit caught up because he's, the youngest bloke in a premiership team and he looks so good, I don't think he's really shown a major scoring ability, has he? I don't think so. Happy to scroll past him. Keidean Coleman, 5% of teams, but if you're one of those, he's out for 8 to 10, so we've got to ditch him, which is really unfortunate because I think he did have some upside. Not that I was probably going to go with him, but he was starting to gain some momentum in the community. And look, we might not have too many more to go. Hamling, 2%, what the heck? I don't understand. Because I don't really want to sort of go into rookies and stuff. So, I think we might just wrap it up. Denver Grange Barras in 2% of teams. I was pretty keen on him at one point as like a top-end rookie, but good interceptor, but just didn't really show anything he sort of came under that category of like, you got to show us something. Like, I like you, you got potential, but you got to convince me in this practice game, and he just didn't. So, but look, I think that's a wrap-up, guys. So, hopefully that's been helpful for you. I know there's sometimes a bit of a longer video. Some people like those, some people don't. But, that's why the timestamps are there, so you can just sift through and just find the part of the video that you want to watch, because there might have been, 25, 30 blokes I talked about. You might have just wanted to hear about 4. So hopefully it made it a bit easier to sift through and find exactly what you're after. So, again, I've been really appreciating all your support and your comments and all the likes on the video. So thanks heaps for that. I'll be back. We'll do the same style of format video through the midfield, through the ruck department and the forward line, of course. So that'll be probably the main videos that I do up until the first bounce, in amongst, the live session, like I mentioned, Tuesday, 8:30. I hope I can have a chat to you there. So we'll wrap it up. I'll get stuck into editing this one and scheduling it for probably over the weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.